This podcast is brought to you by LOETB Community Education Service.
I grew up in a little village called Rochfortbridge. I was lucky enough, my father worked in Móna. He had come home from England. He'd met my mother, who was from County Clare. He was originally from County Cavan, but his parents had took up home in Rochfortbridge, and he saw a future to come home from emigration in England. And the big thing was a job and a house. My father came from a generation when it wasn't, maybe you could get the guards and it wasn't a so-called great job as it is now, or, you know, some jobs like that. He chose to go to do the emigration, was lucky enough to meet my mother, came and settled because they got a board and Móna house. My big recollection is my grandparents talking about, it wasn't about the board and Móna house, it was about the buildings. And I think if they were still alive, and their generation, the locals in Rochfortbridge would call it the buildings, you know, which was a big thing for a small village in the early 60s. I was lucky enough, we were reared in a housing estate that contained 100 houses, big green out the front. Board and Móna actually at the time, the caretakers actually were employed by Board and Móna. There was great pride in the place. And we were educated in Rochfortbridge, both national school and secondary school. We were within walking distance. We had great club sporting amenities. We had libraries. You know, we didn't realise how lucky we were. You know, we had a job over the road then. I was lucky enough to become an apprentice. You know, when I was 16 or 17, what am I going to do? Those things weren't never. But I was lucky enough, I fell on my feet and I got an apprenticeship. And I had 3 brothers, and the gas thing about it, at one stage, all 3 of us were apprentices in Board and Móna. You know, my father worked in Board and Móna. We often joked around the dinner table with my mother in the evenings, Ma, if you could get into Derry Green in the canteen, we'd have everybody working, you know. God, we'd be the butt of all the jokes around the village, in the locality. I served my time in Derry Green, and you know, I met and learnt a lot about life. You know, a great learning curve. I met great craftsmen willing to share their knowledge. You know, it was absolutely a wonderful time. And of course, you have to not forget the big social aspect. You know, because of that, you know, clubs in the locality prospered, and of course, our old enemy across the road, they won all Ireland's. You know, we were big rivals, of course. You know, but like it was always due to because of the bog, because of Board and Móna. You know what I mean? So that's like where I came from. Now, I know we all diversified as the years came ahead. Some of us kept on Board and Móna's, others after their apprenticeship went on, and you know, but they got a great training. You know, whilst my father, like myself, spent all his life in Board and Móna, you know, and he retired out of Board and Móna. You know what I mean? The big learning thing I learned, you know, you only realise it now when we're starting to talk back about times in Board and Móna. It's the great characters, the great people that was in Board and Móna, the diversity, you know, the knowledge we gained, the life experiences, the serious times, the sad times, but really what kept us all going was the fun times, the social times. The social club was a big thing in Board and Móna. It was a big thing. It kept the whole between bog and workshops so united. You know, we were all this one big unit or one big family. We came together to socialise. We came together to acknowledge people that were retiring. You know what I mean? We often had a rows, maybe saying maybe we ran nothing for the people that was working. But we probably had one great yearly outing or dinner dance, you know. So, but the thing about it is, I've seen my grandfather, his family were employed with Bord na Móna. They reared a family. Here am I now, and I've reared my family. Do you know what I mean? And I feel very lucky, you know. I know we can speak badly about Bord na Móna and things like that, but we have to acknowledge every Thursday we had a few bob. Do you know what I mean? It kept us going. And I have to acknowledge I've reared my family because of Bord na Móna, and I'm very proud that I was part of Bord na Móna. And I met some great people and great craftsmen, but I have to acknowledge now we have a younger generation that they're fantastic. These young people, the amount of stuff I've learned before I left Bord na Móna from them, they're absolutely, we have some brilliant people, you know what I mean? And long may it continue, that no matter what they go into or diversify, that these young people will get an opportunity like I did. I had one young fella was very lucky to work his summer holidays, and I'll tell you something, he paid for his college. You know, we were very lucky for that. And it was, he always recalls the great times, you know, he had people. Like, from the chaps in the workshops to the chaps out the bog. Like, every year he got, you know, a different view of everything. And, you know, he still has fond memories of that, you know. And he big into sport, and he said, you know, the people that you meet in just ordinary, you know, and the opportunities he got to learn things while he was just there for the summer holidays. You know what I mean?
Education in itself.
Oh, really true. And I could see it in him. Like, but I have to acknowledge the big thing. He paid for his college out of it, you know, which was a big help to us. You know, Imelda, my wife, and myself, you know. Tough times. I can remember before I started in Bord na Móna, strikes in Bord na Móna. You know, tough times. You know, really stretched people. But one thing that I found, and why I got so fond of it, it was very united. Very united. People were willing to show their experiences. You know, they were willing to their knowledge. You know, which, you know, the teamwork that goes on or went on, and I still think it is, because I can see from, I'm actually experiencing it at the moment, of getting an opportunity to retrain since I left Bord na Móna. Do you know what I mean? Which I think no matter what age you are, you know, and I know some of the present staff, and I hope and wish that they will always get an opportunity, because we don't know what's around the corner. I've done the retrofit course. I've done umpteen courses with the LOETB. I actually did a healthcare course through it. I've done a number of computer courses with them. You know, I'm still, to this day, I'm still availing of it. I'm actually, you know, they're always in touch, always in contact with different training. I think during the process of getting some of us to do HGV licence, I wouldn't like to say I left Bord na Móna. I just changed careers. You know, I want to have a structure to my life. And what I find, I like having known what my week's about. Like, I'm sitting here, it's a Thursday. I still think this is payday in Bord na Móna, and I should be working, you know. I shouldn't be off, you know. I'm 2 years almost. I won't say I miss Bord na Móna, but I've got a great opportunity to change and learn other things. Now, I might never use any of these things there, but I think there was a great emphasis in Bord na Móna about people to retrain, learn. You know, you were always getting given the opportunity to do first aid courses, numerous things, and even going back to the social club in Derry Green, we got people back into further education, like computer course, and the LOETBs were brilliant. They were the drivers of that to give us, like, it was like, I was secretary to the social club at the time, and I remember we used to run them in local schools, like Ballybrine School in over just outside Road. We ran them here in Mullingar. We ran them in a number of places out the road here in Ballycommon. But it was like the game of cards. It was a social outing. While the tutors were brilliant, the lads probably learnt more beside the fella sitting beside it, and we'd young and all doing it. Do you know what I mean? And that process is kicking in now, I think. Maybe, in hindsight, maybe it should have been sooner. But look, never too late, I suppose. Look, there was highly skilled people from all over the country. Like, you think back to older times, people came to live together in all huts, and and so many places that out of Godspeed where they were. Do you know what I mean? And brought them from all over Ireland. But the big thing I always take, and I think is, and even now in our kind of men's group that we have within Board and Móna from all the different works, is the stories, the yarns, the crack, the fun. It was devilment, but what word would I use? The kind. It wasn't out to, not to show people's weak side or what they were. There was a respect, right? There was fun in getting people out of their comfort zone. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can remember overcoming the fear of going into crowds, because Derry Green at 10 o'clock, when the hooter sounded, you'd be in for your tea, a couple hundred people, and you had your space, and if you happened to get delayed going in, you wouldn't go in, because you would get a good reception, because you were made out that you're one of those lakes that wanted to get, so you learn to get over your shyness, and you learn that the fun and the crack, and coming up to Christmas and things like that, it was a lovely place to be in. You know what I mean? You had the social clubs played a big thing in all the works, because I would have worked down in the Black Waters and places like that, and you would have seen me from their Christmas draws and their acknowledgement of people that retired, and then the annual dinner dances, So it was a nice place to be, especially coming up to Christmas. Oh, really, family, and really where it brings it home to you is, even to this day, if you go to a funeral where a Board and Móna man it's an ex-Board and Móna person or a family, you will be there's guaranteed that you will come across so many people that, and even outside the churches or outside the houses they go to, it's the stories, and even what we're doing here tonight, that's probably where you get a lot of stories and the crack and the fun that people would love to hear.
This podcast is brought to you by LOETB Community Education Service.